It was a difficult day of testimony today at the Marathon bombing trial. Several victims took the stand to share their memories of what happened on that day. Among them, Bill Richard, father of 8-year-old Martin Richard, who was killed in the attack, and Jeff Bauman, who lost both his legs as a result. The stories they told were horrific and heartbreaking. WGBH News senior reporter Phillip Martin was in the courtroom throughout the day, and he joins me now. Phillip, hello.
Yeah, Adam, I think the term you used is correct. I mean, this was gut-wrenching.
What was it like for you covering this, to sit here and hear these horrific details, minute after minute, hour after hour? I was trying to follow what was going on Twitter, and I had a hard time with it. What was it like?
Well, I think you'd have to disassociate yourself from any type of emotion if you weren't impacted by it. I don't think I spoke to a single journalist today who wasn't impacted by this testimony in some way. It was just emotional. It was extraordinary. It didn't just bring you back to April 15, 2013, if you were here, and if you covered that, it did more than that. It exposed and showed aspects of that day that perhaps we hadn't seen, and you certainly could not have experienced emotionally. And the testimony from people like Bill Richard, William Richard, Martin Richard's father, was extraordinary in that sense.
I want to ask you for some examples of information or perspectives that were new that you got today, although in a way I'm sort of afraid of hearing the answer. But what were some of the new vantage points that you got listening to the testimony? Well,
I think a lot of this was accomplished not only with testimony but with video. So while you're hearing the voice, while you're hearing Bill Richard describe coming to the marathon and a regular day, a beautiful sunny day, and they did what they always did. They went all out for ice cream at Emack and Bulio on Newberry Street. A very ordinary type of thing, and it's the ordinariness of it that's so extraordinary. Came back and wanted to get as close to the finish line as possible to see coaches who coached the children, see them come in, see them arrive, and of course the
coaches who coached the Richard children.
The Richard children, of course, and friends, and of course the family. This was a great outing, and you had an explosion. And to hear Bill Richard describe looking for his son, seeing his son, knowing that he wasn't going to survive, looking for his daughter Jane, and to realize that she would likely, even then, knew that she would lose probably her leg. One leg was already gone at that point. Looking for Denise, his wife, and ending up at the hospital. And he said, when you saw the look of horror on doctors' faces, you know this was truly a horrible event, because doctors don't usually betray that. And he also lost hearing. So what you had was a family where the daughter lost her legs, the wife lost an eye, the father lost part of his hearing, and the family lost a son.
One of the things that, in addition to what you just described, I found really difficult to process as I was following this online was the sort of contingency that was involved. Because didn't Bill Richard talk about how they changed their usual marathon routine a little bit? They didn't do what they ordinarily would have done, right?
Well, ordinarily, they would have gotten there a lot earlier to watch the elite runners come across. They got there later than usual, and they would have been. They probably would have been a little closer to the marathon finish line. This, of course, they weren't exactly there. They were at the Forum, which is close enough, but not quite there. And so, yes, they had changed their routine a little bit. The timing was particularly significant in the fact that they arrived late.
Were there any other witnesses today who stood out to you?
Yeah, there was Sadora, young
Roseanne Sadora.
Roseanne Sadora. She was extraordinary. She talked about knowing that she was injured, making decisions that day that she could not believe she had made in retrospect, of course, and this happens, and then finding that she was injured, didn't think she would survive, didn't think she would live, asking and praying for morphine that day after she was injured, and trying to reach her, asking friends to reach her mom, and said, I just can't imagine calling them and telling them that their daughter died on Boylston Street that day. Let me mention something else that I think that's very important. A lot of this testimony, again, is gut-wrenching, and the defense chose not to cross-examine.
I was going to ask you about that.
And of course, there's no way they really could, because what they're looking at this point, a lot of this you would hear during the sentencing phase. This was, you would be hearing these impact statements, victim impact statements, which is what, though we were listening to evidence today and testimony, it also amounts to victim impact. And so a lot of this would be in the sentencing phase. Thus, the defense objected this morning to Judge O'Toole about the type of testimony that they were.
Oh, interesting. And obviously the judge did not side with the defense.
The judge sided with the prosecution on this, said, look, this is evidence. But this is evidence that isn't, as I'm describing it now, is gut-wrenching. It has an emotional impact. And you could see the impact on the jurors' faces. I watched three jury members actually wiping away tears from their eyes during the Richard testimony.
What about Jahar Tsarnaev, who it's worth mentioning, according to his attorneys, is not going to argue that he didn't do it. He's going to say he did it and was sort of forced to do it by his brother. How did he respond to this stuff?
Yeah, as you said, this is already, for the defense, that's already established. Right. They know that's an uphill battle, and so they're fighting a rear guard action to keep him from being killed.
So what did he, how did he like, for example, when Bill Richard was speaking?
When their eyes never met. Bill Richard, in fact, didn't look at him either. Jahar Tsarnaev looked straight ahead or down, and so he was looking either straight ahead or down. And the witness, again, Bill Richard, to his side, to his right, looked at the jury, looked at the judge, looked at the prosecutor, but did not pay any attention whatsoever to Jahar Tsarnaev. I'm
going to put you on the spot here. Last
Please.
Question. Do you think we will hear from Jahar Tsarnaev at any point in this trial?
I don't think we will. I don't think it's to the advantage of the defense to put Jahar Tsarnaev on the stand. There's nothing that could be accomplished there. He cannot evoke sympathy. There's very little that can be done by him being on the stand.
All right, Phillip Martin, thank you.
Thank you, Adam.